Let's start. I see a few new names, so please bear with me while I just briefly introduce CDC, as some of you might not know us. So for the CDC, we're a registered NGO in Hong Kong since 1976. Our mission is for every child to succeed in their unique learning journey. And we also want to empower the families on the way as well. We offer specialized education group programs, individual therapies, and also assessments for children with a wide range of abilities from 6 months to about 16 years old in both English, Cantonese, and Mandarin as well. We also provide parent education, so like the workshop we have tonight. We also offer practical advice, share information with families to help meet their long-term and also short-term goals. And we also offer some home visits as well. So why choose the CDC? We have a 1 to 3 adult to child ratio for our group programs. We have an interdisciplinary expertise. We have STs, OTs. So these would be our speech and language therapists, our occupational therapists. We have our SEN teachers, special childcare workers, our psychologists, ABA therapists, social workers, as well as music therapists as well. So in terms of our program, like I've mentioned just now, we offer group programs, early intervention groups. We also offer individual sessions, also focus programs. So for example, attention group, social skills group. We also offer something called the Lego-based therapy program as well. We also offer screening, assessments, and also consultation services as well. So apart from our programs, we also offer different activities for our families. So as you can see from the pictures, we've went to Disneyland. We paired up with the HKU dentistry, where our children went and became mini dentists, where they helped check their parents' teeth. And then in turn, the dentists check their teeth as well. And then the picture next to it, you would see our music therapy, the group session, our winter celebration. We also had sports day at the beach. We also had dog therapy, some yoga, as well as other festivities that we offer as well. So if you're ever interested in any of our programs or different events that we're hosting, please do feel free to go onto our website or follow us on our social media accounts, and you would find more information over there as well. And of course, if you're ever interested and wanting to talk to someone about your concerns or what programs might be most suitable for your children, do feel free to give us a call. Okay. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second seminar of the series. So my name is Wendy, and I am the Program Officer and Social Worker at CDC. And I'm also going to be the facilitator for tonight's seminar. So tonight we'll follow on from the last week's seminar on the power of positive parenting. So for those of you who are able to attend next week, our next topic would be about raising resilient children. And for tonight, we're going to be focusing on raising confident, competent children. I hope you find this session informative and helpful. So during this presentation, we'll begin by discussing the importance of making sure that our children get off to the right start. We'll also look at the role that parents can play in laying the foundations for our children's successes at school and beyond as well. We will also discuss the 6 important building blocks of life skills and how we can, as parents, promote these skills in our children. And after that, we would conclude with some key take-home messages. I would present for about 45 minutes to an hour. And after that, we can have some question time where you can raise any specific issues or concerns about your own child. Like I mentioned last time, this is a recorded session. So if you are going to share any of your concerns, please do remember not to share your child's name. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing or asking here, that's absolutely fine. You can always email me or give me a call later on as well. So let's start. The values, skills, and behaviors to encourage in our children are the choices of every individual parent. These are based on our own goals, our own families, and also cultural heritage as well. The foundations for children's social and emotional skills are laid in their early years and can influence their success at school, in their relationships, and in life in general. There are some core social and emotional skills that are important for everyone. We'll be talking about these skills today and how they help our children develop confidence, reach their potential, and get on well with others as well. So from infancy through to the teenage years, us as parents have a very important role in encouraging children to develop their skills. So as mentioned just now, there are 6 key building blocks for success. So in here, we've identified them as showing respect to others, being considerate, having good communication and social skills, having healthy self-esteem, becoming a good problem solver, becoming independent as well. So these are the basic skills that our children need to do well throughout life. And as parents, we can help our children develop these skills. So let's take a look at these blocks one by one. The first building block is about showing respect to others. Children are more likely to have good relationships with their parents, peers, teachers, and others when they learn to behave respectfully. Skills such as speaking politely and using appropriate ways of addressing another person convey respect. So at school, our children are usually expected to address their teachers as Mr., Mrs., or Miss, and not by their first names. But in other situations, it can be difficult for our children to know how an adult wishes to be addressed. So it is a good idea if you can teach your children how to address their adults, which they normally come into contact with, especially in the Chinese culture when all relatives have different specific titles, right? So it can be confusing for our children. Sometimes they may refer to an adult by their first name. So for example, this happens in our center where for our programs taught in English, we expect our children to refer to us in our first name instead of calling us Mrs., Miss, etc. And sometimes in other situations, they are expected to refer to another adult in their family, for example, and invert their specific titles. And sometimes just aunties and uncles in general. So it would be a very good idea to let your child know what is expected of them, or let your child know how to address that adult when you introduce them to that new adult. Or if it's for younger children, if it's many different titles that they have to remember and they're really struggling, maybe you can give them a little nudge and remind them before going into that event, or even when you're in that event or in that situation, you can still remind your child. Maybe you can whisper in their ear just to give them a little reminder. So cooperating with parents and teachers' requests and instructions is also an important part of showing respect as well. And finally, if our children follow family, school, and classroom rules, they're much less likely to get into trouble. And another part would be encouraging politeness. So part of being respectful is about being polite. And our children learn these skills more easily when parents do the following. So the first one would be model speaking to others in a polite and respectful manner. This means speaking in a pleasant tone of voice and using appropriate language. So for example, if you don't want your child to be swearing, then it's probably a good idea not to swear in front of your child. Another one would be to teach your child to ask politely for things they want by prompting them to use a pleasant voice. Sometimes our children need to be reminded to ask politely when they want something. Praise your child for being polite and speaking pleasantly, especially if they did not need your reminder. So for example, you can say something along the lines of, Jasper, thank you for asking so politely for my help. I like it when you ask nicely. So the last point would be not to give your child what they want when they ask in a rude or unpleasant way, such as by whining or if they're being very, very demanding in their tone of voice. If you give in to your child and you give them what they want in such instances, it will only teach our children that they do not need to be polite because they'll get what they want anyways. So being cooperative means slightly different things depending on the situation. So our children need to be able to stop what they're doing. For example, they need to be able to stop immediately when a teacher says to stop an activity and put pencils down. Our children need to be able to listen and pay attention to what is being said, so they understand what is required of them. They need to be able to follow an instruction straight away without complaining. Another one would be to join into class or group activities. And the last one would be cooperating with other children. So children's relationship with other children are very, very important. When children learn to share, take turns, and work with rather than against other children, they get on better with their peers. So how can we encourage cooperation? So we can help our children to learn to be cooperative. And if you want to your children to follow an instruction, you can try getting very close to them. So last week we talked about if you want to get your child's attention, not to be shouting from the different room, but rather to get in the same room within a close distance with your child. Use your child's name. So for example, we'll use Emily in this instance. State the instruction clearly in a calm but firm voice. So for example, Emily, your game is over. It is time to turn off your computer. Shut it down, please. So then you want to wait for 5 seconds without saying anything else. Praise your child if they do as you ask straight away. So for example, Emily, thank you for turning off the computer when I asked. If your child doesn't do as they're asked, calmly repeat the instruction again once more. And then wait for another 5 seconds without saying anything. So for example, the instruction could be when repeating, Emily, I've asked you to do something. Shut down the computer now, please. And be able to back up your instruction with a suitable consequence if your child does not do as you ask. The consequence may be losing a privilege for a short period of time. So for example, not having TV privileges or computer games. It could also be delaying the privilege or things that they enjoy doing, or having quiet time on the edge of the activity, like we mentioned last week as well. So another point to remind parents would be to practice these skills. Have a plan on what you're going to say and practice it in front of a mirror first. Because sometimes we might actually be very angry. We look very angry, we sound very angry, even though we think we're very calm and we are very firm. But sometimes our children can see us and they might think that we look very, very angry. So we can try practicing in front of a mirror first on what you're going to say, plan it ahead. It's always the best to plan ahead so you're not flustered or not sure what to do and you're a bit rushing in that situation. So the second building block is about teaching our children to be considerate towards others. So why is being considerate important? This is because that our children will find it easier to develop positive relationships with others if they are being considerate. So being considerate can mean many, many things. It includes looking and listening when someone is speaking. So for example, when a friend is telling a story, taking turns and being fair in games and activities, whether our children are able to follow the rules, for example, so that it's fair for everyone in the same game. Asking what others would like to do rather than assuming others would always want to follow. Waiting patiently and not interrupting while others are busy or speaking. So this could also be interpreted as relating to the first point, where when our children, when their friends share a story, they might think of something that they really want to share as well. And it's important to encourage our children and let them know that it's important to let their friend finish what they're wanting to say before they then add on and start sharing about their own stories and their own ideas. So the next one will be about thinking about other people's feelings, helping others, and also being friendly and welcoming, such as when there is a new friend or a new child coming into the class, whether they can befriend them and be nice and warm. And also doing their own share, so such as doing chores at home and helping tidy up at school. And us as parents can make it a lot easier for children to learn how to be considerate. So here are some suggestions. The first one being encouraging your child to be considerate by modeling that yourself. So you can see we have the same theme coming through again, right? If we want our children to be able to do something, or if we want our children to have particular characteristics or skill sets, it's always best if we are able to model them ourselves. Another one would be to avoid putting down or criticizing others. So when our children hear us being critical of others, making sarcastic or negative comments about other people, they may interpret or learn this behavior thinking that it is okay to make hurtful comments, or maybe they think it's normal to make hurtful comments. Another one would be pointing out other people's good points and achievements. And when someone shows an act of kindness, you can point it out during family conversations. So for example, you can say something along the lines of, I saw Calvin helping an old lady with her trolley up the stairs at the MTR station the other day. He is such a kind person to help, even though he looked like he was in a rush. So the next point being, give your child opportunities to be involved and show caring behavior, such as being responsible for feeding a pet, remembering to feed a goldfish or the turtle, for example. Another one would be to praise your child when they try to be helpful or show awareness to other people's feelings. So for example, if your throat is not well and you start coughing and your child then brings you some water, acknowledge their effort and thank them for their kindness. So for example, Thomas, it is very nice of you to bring me the water. Thank you so much. And also tell them how it makes you feel. So for example, I feel so special when you think of me. This helps our children to learn that being considerate and helpful can help build relationship with others, and it also helps them feel good about themselves as well. Encourage your child to think how things make them feel or how it might make other people feel. So it could be something like, I wonder how Sean feels right now. How do you think you would feel if that happened to you? Another one would be to encourage our children to make amends if they have done something that hurts or upsets someone. So for example, we can encourage our children saying sorry. For some of our children, they may struggle with this initially. So instead of forcing them to say sorry, we could maybe encourage shaking of hands, maybe giving a hug, extending an olive branch first before we slowly build up to our child then being able to say sorry. So another one would be to provide a consequence for inconsiderate or hurtful behavior. So it is always good to start practicing these when our children are still young. A third building block is having good communication and social skills. So children with good social skills have an advantage. They would find it easier to make and keep friends. They are more popular and liked by their peers. They get on well with others and deal with social situations better. And they have less conflict and fewer disagreements and arguments with others as well. So our children's social skills are important to their peer relationships. And what can parents do to help our children make good friends and, most importantly, keep these good friendships? So we can help by showing an interest in your child's family and also their family as well. Talk about what it means to be a good friend with your child and how to make new friends and look after the friendship. So this can come up in casual conversations or when an event happens. So for example, if a child gets hurt, how to react and what to say. You can suggest that your child invites other children to visit your home, or you guys can go to different places and for different activities like going to the park or going swimming together. One of the reasons why we suggest inviting other children to your home is so that you can teach your child what are the appropriate behaviors that you expect from them when they have a visitor, when they're being a little host, and also demonstrate that you have the same appropriate behavior expectations from the other children that when they're guests in your home. So you're setting an example for your child on how to behave when they're in other people's homes as well. So use your usual consequences if problems happen. You could use a consequence such as separating the children for a short period of time. and make sure that the children know exactly why it is happening. So for example, the child is at your home for the first time and something has happened, you're having to separate your child and also the other child. Make sure particularly the other child knows why this is happening. Also talk to the visiting child's parents about the problem, what you've done if they weren't there, and also talk together about how you guys might prevent or deal with this if this happens again in the future as well. So many of our children do get into some type or form of conflict with their peers. I think this is inevitable if they are playing with other children. So this is common and normal. However, one very real concern is when a child hurts another child. This needs to be taken very seriously. And if you find out that this is happening, try to work out why this is happening and develop a plan to deal with the problem. So if another parent or the school has reported to you that your child has hurt another child, you can consider doing the following steps. So the first one being listening very carefully to what your child is said to have done. Discuss the problem with your child. So let them know you found out and exactly what you were told. Ask your child to tell you what happened and listen to their explanation. This is very important. Let your child tell their own side of the story. So let your child know that hurting others is a very serious problem and it must stop. Do not accept explanations that play down the problem. So, for example, they're saying that it was all for fun. Talk to your child about how their behavior affects others. So, for example, you can say something along the lines of, how do you think you would feel if someone did that to you? Explain the consequences of hurting others. So, for example, that explaining that aggression is not tolerated at school, and your child could get into serious trouble if they continue this way. Watch how your child interacts with other children. What does your child do that may annoy or upset other children, such as name calling, maybe threatening, hitting, hurting, excluding other children, making up stories or telling tales about other children, for example? Praise your child and give them positive attention for playing well with others. If you see your child hurting another child, though, act very quickly, act immediately. Tell your child what they have done wrong and what they should have done instead. Provide an immediate consequence, such as timeout or a loss of privilege. And if the problem is serious or long-standing, work with your child's school and find out how they would like to deal with the situation as well. You could also seek some help from the teachers, whether they have any strategies or tips in terms of how you could then improve this area with your child together as well. So the next one is about having healthy self-esteem. So why is self-esteem so important? Children with healthy self-esteem are likely to be happy, cooperative, successful, and be able to make friends easily. And children with low self-esteem often feel inadequate, they're reluctant to try anything new, and they're likely to give up very easily without achieving success or reaching their goal. So positive self-esteem in children can be influenced by thinking and believing in good things about themselves, such as, oh, I can read this book, or I will try hard, I can do this. Another one would be receiving lots of praise, affection, and attention from parents. Having their achievements recognized. Children do not have to be the best at something to feel good about their accomplishment. It is important that effort and gradual improvements are acknowledged. So this is very important here. Like we mentioned in last week's session, it's important to praise our children's effort and for them to be able to take that step in trying. So we really do want to appreciate and let them know that how much we appreciate and praise them in these situations. Having clear limits and appropriate discipline so the children know where they stand. They know what to expect. They know how they're expected to behave. So when our children have low self-esteem, this could result from, and we could reflect whether we're falling into these traps. Are we making unfavorable comparisons with their siblings? Lack of self-care and hygiene, lack of physical activity and low fitness level, having poor body image or being overweight, are children having negative or pessimistic thinking, they have frequent arguments and conflicts between with peers, and also if they witness a lot of arguments and conflicts between parents as well. And in some cases, of course, neglect and abuse will affect our children's self-esteem. So how can we encourage healthy self-esteem? So this is about creating a safe, secure, predictable environment for our children. And children feel more secure, they know what to expect. Encourage an active lifestyle. Spend time with your child doing active things that are fun and that they enjoy. And give your child plenty of affection, such as with cuddles and kisses and saying, I love you. Children feel good about themselves when they know they are wanted and loved. Let's have a think. You don't have to share if you don't want to, but if you do, you can type in the chat box. Do you remember when was the last time that you said, I love you to your child, to your partner? And lastly, when was the last time you said, I love you to yourself? So while you have a think, we'll move on to the next point. We want to be able to encourage our children to set goals for themselves. For example, how many books do you think you can read this week? Our children develop self-confidence when they set goals for themselves and achieve what they set out to do. Help your child learn to be a good friend. Friendships have a major impact on our children's self-esteem. So referring back to the previous building blocks we mentioned, teaching a child how to maintain those good friendships as well. Encouraging your child to see their accomplishments to help them form accurate views of their strengths and weaknesses, and to feel good about what they have achieved. Encourage your child to express their ideas. Being listened to, being involved in discussions, and having their opinions valued all help to build our children's self-esteem. Another one would be to encourage laughter. Children who feel good about themselves laugh spontaneously and enjoy telling stories and jokes. And lastly, let your child make decisions when it is appropriate and safe. This increases self-confidence. So for example, children can make decisions about what they would like to play, who they want to play with, what music they enjoy listening to, and what games or sports they would like to play. Involve your children in family decision-making. So for example, you guys can have a chat about what are the household rules, or if you guys are going out for the day, maybe your child can choose which restaurant they want to have for dinner. So the fifth building block is about becoming a good problem solver. The ability to solve problems is an important life skill. So schoolwork and learning in general involve learning about problem solving. Developing problem-solving skills can help children in many areas. So for example, personal development, their self-esteem, their confidence, their schoolwork and academic learning in general, learning in other areas such as hobbies or different sports, and also developing social skills and building relationships as well. So here are some ideas in helping our children to learn how to problem solve. The first one being setting a good example. So let your child see how you deal with problems and talk about how you can break a problem down into smaller parts that can be worked out one at a time. So if people came last week, if you remember, we talked about in the dinner table, instead of just your child sharing about their day, you can also share about your day. And particularly if you've gone through something that was particularly tough and you had to solve different problems, it would be good to demonstrate to your child and use these opportunities to teach your children how you deal with these difficult emotions or these problems. And our children can learn from us that way. Encourage games and activities that promote thinking and problem solving. You can encourage your child to find answers themselves. So for example, if your child comes to you with a problem, you can encourage them to try and find the answer maybe in different books or maybe on Google, for example. So rather than solving all of their problems, encourage your child to work at solving their own problems. So if that's still a struggle, maybe they're saying they've gone away, they've said they've tried, and then they come back and they're saying, oh, I still can't solve this. Instead of stepping in and solving it for them, we can solve it with them together, side by side. So for example, if they don't know what to input in Google, we can do it together, thinking, oh, what's the best way to do it? If we put it in a question, does it come up with the answers we're looking for? And if not, can we rephrase it? How can we phrase it better? So these could be some ideas that you guys could work on. Another one would be to congratulate your child when they solve a problem, especially when they're able to do it on their own without your help. And also involve your child in family problem-solving discussions as well. So each of us would have very different ways and approaches in terms of how we deal with problems, how we solve these problems. So it would be good for our children to learn from different family members and how each one of us would then approach different problems or approach the same problem and how there are different ways to solve one problem. We can also teach our child about basic problem-solving steps. And these could be stating down the problem very clearly, knowing what the problem is, coming up with some possible solutions. And we can then think about good points and bad points about each solution. So this would be for older children, where they're able to comprehend a bit more, comprehend the problem, what are different solutions. And you can also put that on a piece of paper, for example, list out what are the good points, what are the bad points for each solution. And then you can choose the best solution. Or is it possible to do a combination of ideas? The next step would then to be putting the plan into action. And after that, come back together and review how the solution worked. And if it didn't work, whether we could tweak it a little to try again, or do we need to try something else completely? So the final building block is about helping children to become more independent. As our children develop, they're able to do more and more things for themselves without their parents' help. And sometimes this can upset some of our parents who may feel that they're not as needed by our children as much anymore. But actually, in reality, our children continue to need us as parents to provide guidance as they master more complex skills. So they still do need us, but probably in a different way. So as children become more independent, their confidence would develop. This gradual increase in independence prepares our children for later life. It also enables children to participate in and contribute to the smooth running of the home and family life as well. Becoming independent involves learning basic self-care skills, gradually taking on more responsibilities, and learning to feel confident about their abilities. So some of the behaviors that show increasing independence can include getting ready to go out, completing simple household chores. So self-help skills like we mentioned, such as using the toilet, brushing their hair and teeth. They're able to dress and undress themselves, packing and unpacking their school bags, looking after their own things, tidying up after themselves, getting ready for school. And lastly, cooking or using different tools under the supervision of parents or other adults as well. So establishing routines can help our children learn to become more independent. So let's look at an example of a morning routine. So for school children, the routine might include getting themselves out of bed at a suitable time, getting themselves dressed and groomed for school, having a healthy breakfast, having everything ready for their day's activities. This includes at school and also any other extracurricular activities. Arriving at school in an alert, positive frame of mind, ready to learn. I think this would be quite difficult for some of our children. Sometimes I find it hard for me as an adult to go into work but having an alert, positive frame of mind. Because sometimes, understandably, we can still feel very, very tired, right? So it's okay if we have a slip once in a while. But in general, we do wish to be able to encourage our children to be alert and happy, and also ready to learn when they're at school. Next one would be maybe greeting their teachers and peers politely when they get to school. And there are a couple of traps that we can get into as parents that make it a bit harder for our children to get into a good morning routine. So for example, getting up late ourselves and needing to rush to get ready, not being organized, taking over and doing everything for our child. Because if we're already in a rush and our children is trying to change, dress and undress themselves, and you think, oh, they're doing it too slowly, I must dress them because we're already late. So you're rushing, you're doing everything for your child instead of promoting their independence and letting them do it themselves. And lastly, using too many reminders so that your child learns to rely on prompts and reminders rather than learning to get ready on their own. So this would be something that we might often find it difficult to relax a little bit. One of the ways is that we could develop maybe official prompt together with our children. So for younger children, we might have maybe different pictures, for example, that we've laid out. So we've had on a piece of sheet of paper, different tasks that they have to do, where we could sit together and lay the tasks out together. The night before, maybe you can review it every night with your child, whether they want to change their routines around. And then in the morning, they can take out that piece of paper again, and then they could follow those visual cues. And they could then follow those prompts themselves instead of them relying on you as the parent to give them those verbal prompts. And for older children, when they're able to write, maybe they can list out the things that they need to do in the morning. So for example, what time they have to get up, then setting their alarms themselves, for example. And we can, once we've established this routine, we can see whether we could slowly then fade out those, us as parents, our verbal prompts, and then later maybe those visual prompts, whether we can fade them out. And even if they can't fade it out, it's okay as well. Because a lot of the times, I know for myself, if I know I have a lot on my plate and I'm being a bit forgetful, I would also use the notes app on my phone and just note down a few prompts for myself, right? So it's okay as long as our children independently knows how to use these prompts instead of relying on other people to remind them. So how can we help our children to get into a good morning routine? So like I mentioned just now, we can plan ahead. Be clear about your child's and your own commitments and activities of the next day. So for example, I know especially for children in Hong Kong, we often have a lot of extracurricular activities. If not, we would have to go to maybe different tutor classes, sports teams, for example, training. There are many, many different things every single day. So do our children know what activities or commitments they have the next day? Do we as parents know what we're doing the next day? So it's good to plan ahead. What do we need? Be organized, have everything ready the night before, lay out the school clothes, have the sports equipment already packed in the bag. Another one would be to avoid distractions. So for example, no TV or computer before school. Discuss the morning ground rules so that your child knows what you would like them to do each morning. So for example, some parents would be like, I want you to wake up, brush your teeth, get dressed, eat breakfast. Some other parents might want, okay, wake up, brush your teeth, eat breakfast, and then change, for example. It's okay as long as you have an established morning routine and your child knows what is expected of them. Another one would be to start an activity schedule for the morning routine. So this can include objects, photographs, drawings, like I mentioned earlier, representing the different steps of the routine that must be completed, and arrange it in the order they must be completed. So this was the similar to what I mentioned just now. And once we've established the morning routine, bit by bit, we can see if we can then extend it to later, maybe afternoon, school, after you come back from school, the routine then. What would that look like? So always work on one small part first, and once you've established it and it's more settled, you can then look into expanding it into other areas as well. So at first, we might have to prompt our children and remind them to use their schedules. Praise and reward your child for completing the steps, especially when they're able to do it without your reminder or your prompt. And then, as mentioned, we can gradually reduce the prompts and also reduce the rewards as well. So just like in the morning, there are a few after-school traps that parents can get into that make it harder for our children to get into a good afternoon routine. So traps could include having too many activities on too many days. Ideally, we say we don't want to have more than 2 afternoons that is taken up by organized after-school activities. So ideally, I know it's difficult. We want to have 3 days where our children can just go out and play and relax. Another trap would be not having enough routine. Our children do like routine and for things to be predictable. The opposite of being predictable would be having too many changes from one day to the next. And the next one would be a trap that I think it's quite difficult for us as parents, where sometimes we could accidentally reward our children for avoiding or delaying doing homework, but allowing them to delay it while they play or watch television, when we're not really exactly sure how much homework they have, whether they've really finished all their homework, for example. So some ideas for getting into a good after-school routine could include having a predictable routine that your child understands, allowing your child to unwind and relax after school, giving your child a healthy snack to eat, deciding on a time to start homework, and really sticking to it. And if your child is struggling with it, remember, we can always back it up with a consequence. And allowing play, TV, and computer games after homework is done. So let's look at what are some of the main take-home messages from everything that we've discussed tonight. The first one being that the values, skills, and behaviors that our children are encouraged to learn are the choice of each individual parent. There are some core skills that are building blocks for later development, and they help children. So for example, developing confidence in themselves, reaching their potential in school and other activities, build relationships and learn to get on well with others. And us as parents have the important role of helping our children to develop their skills at each stage in their development. Remember, from infancy all the way into their teenage years. So let's recap on the 6 building blocks that we talked about tonight. The first one being encouraging your child to show respect. Second being encouraging your children to be considerate. Third one being helping our children to become a good communicator and developing their social skills. The fourth one being helping our children to develop healthy self-esteem. The fifth one being teaching your child to become a good problem solver. Promote independence by encouraging your child to take responsibility and do things for themselves.